Good evening, everyone, and welcome to chapter 11 of A Message to Scott Captain. Today is the 24th, or the Christmas Eve. So I hope that all of you, even though this video is going to come out probably much later, I hope that you all have some sort of Christmas spirit in you and not just in the possession kind of way. Enjoy the video. Chapter 11. The first sensation he became aware of was a pulsating pain in his head and an aching in his neck. He dragged his eyes open and looked down at the wooden floorboards beneath his feet. He presumed he had fallen asleep, because his muscles felt stiff and his eyes were blurry. He blinked a couple of times, trying to remember the last thing he did before he fell asleep, and to his surprise he found that he couldn't. The lounge was dark, and he had to wait for his eyes to adjust. Outside, orange sunlight lit the clouded sky. It looked like the sun would soon set. What time was it though? Why was the cabin so dark? With a groan, he straightened his back and realized that he was sitting on a chair. But if he was on a chair, why didn't he fall off it when he fell asleep? That's when he became aware of the tape around his wrists. In a sudden surge of panic, he tried to get up off the chair. He couldn't. He was tied down. He looked around, his greenish-brown eyes darting around the shady room, trying to find some indication as to what had happened to him. There was a black substance drying up on the floor. He saw the shattered coffee table. A little black statue of an owl glinted with red. The pain in his head increased as he looked at it. It all came rushing back to him in a series of overwhelming sights, sounds, and sensations. Where is everyone else? He turned around as best as he could and saw them. Will was to his right, his body leading to the side with a recently formed bruise on the left side of his forehead. Ryan was to his left. His jaw was hanging at a less than natural angle with a concealed blood around his light mustache. Baz was directly behind him, so he couldn't see if there were any injuries to his friend's face or body. He could however see the red marks around the sides of his neck. Louis was sitting against the kitchen counter. He looked like he was sleeping. The Scotsman couldn't tell if that was a good or bad thing at the moment. Reese shook his arms again, trying to break the tape bonds. They wouldn't move. He felt around for a tear or edge he could pull at, but found nothing. He did, however, realize that all of his friends' wrists were tied together with the same piece of tape. That's why he couldn't stand up. They were holding him down. Guys! Reese hissed, the noise seeming to echo around the room. Guys, wake up! He racked his brain for any good idea. Call for help? There was no one else around the enchanted village. They were alone. Call for Louis? It was clear that the epileptic fit, or whatever it was, had damaged his brain in some way, or maybe had given him some sort of memory loss. Perhaps it was temporary. Of course it's temporary. Perhaps he could help Louis? You already tried to. What if Louis still wanted to hurt him? No, he didn't want that. It wasn't him. He wasn't doing this on purpose. He quickly stopped thinking about it as tears started to pool in the corners of his eyes. In a panic, he came to the best conclusion he possibly could. Shake around like a madman until someone else wakes up. He kicked his legs against the floor in the chair he sat on, twisted and turned his hands, elbowing Ryan and Will in their shoulders. Neither of them woke up, but Louis did. In the shadow, the Scotsman saw two glinting eyes snap open and look towards him. A chill ran down his spine and he shuddered. He heard Louis' breathing quicken and saw his shadowy outline shuffle around, dragging his legs up to his chin and hugging them tightly. Reese thought he saw Louis rocking back and forth ever so slightly. his youngest friend started. How could you blame me? He laughed involuntarily. I mean, how could you blame me, right? Reese watched Louis' figure shake. He opened his mouth and closed it, not sure what to say. No, I don't think so. Louis told no one in particular. It's better. I make it better. He started humming gleefully, giggling every now and then. Hey, buddy. Reese's words stuck to his tongue. Louis stopped his merry little tune. How are you feeling? No. Yeah? I don't want to. Louis, Please! He suddenly screamed, smashing his head against the counter he was sitting against. With that, he doubled up with laughter. With the dual light that seeped through the window, Reese saw the slight shine of Louis' teeth as his face contorted into a grin and then into a grimace. This is just what I wanted! He called into the darkness, standing up. He stumbled towards Reese as if he was drunk. The Scotsman could finally make out more details. The black liquid had mostly been wiped from his mouth and onto his sleeve, but some of it still stuck to his chin in drag flakes. His skin looked extremely pale, almost ghost-like, and his eyes seemed to gleam in the low light. A few spots of blood were on his hoodie, but they weren't his own. As Louis leaned towards him, Reese leaned backwards. It's just Louis, he kept reassuring himself. But with every repetition of the phrase, his mind doubted itself even more. Just what I wanted, his younger friend whispered. All my friends in one place. He grabbed Reese's grey dyed hair and jerked his head forward. Ain't this nice? He whispered into the Scotsman's ear. Reese said nothing. The wrong response. Louis gritted his teeth and huffed in annoyance, letting go of his older friend's head. He muttered to himself, running a hand through his fringe and looked immensely into Reese's eyes. You're just like him, aren't you? Like who? Reese breathed, sweat running down his face in never-ending streams. Louis smiled. You just want to use me, don't you? Of course you do. Louis, I don't understand. Just like him! The younger man shrieked as he kicked a broken plank of table leg across the room. The crash made the Scotsman flinch. But do you know what? That's okay, he continued. Because do you know what? We're gonna send him a message. We're gonna show him that I'm not just a fucking toy. Louis strode to the kitchen and opened a drawer. Reese heard the sound of metal sliding on metal. Louis returned, swinging a knife experimentally through the air. It dazzled the light in a mocking manner. Louis pointed the tip of the hungry blade towards the Scotsman. We're gonna send him a fucking message. Do you understand that? Reese fearfully stared at the knife. Louis, please think about what you're doing, okay? Can't you remember what happened to you? His younger friend cocked his head to the side, lowering the knife ever so slightly. Louis, you had a seizure. After lunch, you started crying in pain and you were shaking and crying. The grinning man stalked towards Reese, closing the space between them. And we couldn't save you. We tried. I tried so hard. I know you are probably confused and terrified, but please, we are your friends. Just talk to us. Tell us the truth. What's happening? Louis crouched down in front of the Scotsman, resting the knife on his knee. Reese looked away and closed his eyes. Something cold scrubbed against his neck. You want to know the truth? Louis asked, surprisingly calm as the cold line danced across the Scotsman's skin. I've never felt more alive. before. And do you know what? Louis paused doubtfully. What? Reese asked, his voice barely a squeak. I think I'm going to enjoy this. The cold line left Reese's neck, and he heard receding footsteps. He inched his eyes open to see Louis opening a cupboard. He pulled out 4 pieces of colored plastic, their shapes familiar to the Scotsman's mind. The younger man chuckled as he walked back over to his older companion. Seems as you are being so nice to me, I'll let you decide. Which one would you like? Reese glanced at the 4 different masks, quickly identifying what they were. The first was a brown bear with a lighter colored cheeks with a black hat. Freddy. The second one was a purple rabbit with blue highlights and long ears. Bonnie. The third was a yellow chicken with an orange beak that had 2 square teeth sticking out. Chica. The fourth and final mask was a red fox with a black eye patch and a set of sharpened teeth, a few of which were golden. Foxy. Louis struck the Scotsman's eye movements with interest, smiling at his hesitancy. He was enjoying this. Who's the toy now, Can decide? He asked with a humored tone. I know, don't worry. Picking out the clothes to die in must be a big responsibility for you. Reese shook with fear and bit the inside of his mouth to stop himself from making any noise. Don't worry, I'm sure I can choose a good one for you. He placed the mask to the side and leaned in towards Reese, their faces barely a few centimeters apart. Louis' breath felt cold, and his stare seemed to look directly into the Scotsman's soul, making him feel exposed and vulnerable. He's going to regret ever messing with me, Louis whispered harshly. You all are. A fist flew towards Reese's face and he fell back into unconsciousness.